Welcome to Amiga Ireland. It's episode 3 of this season. I'm Irla.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Luke.
In today's episode, Denny Atkins' book, Best Amiga Tips and Secrets.
We're going to look at some of the games news, including a quick look at Bridge Strike. Very nice looking game in the works.
And a little bit of hardware as well. Polish Amiga Turbo Board Warp 1260.
How's everyone been doing? It's been a month.
Not too bad, thank you very much. I've received a retro keyboard from my friend recently. I've yet to test it, to be honest, due to, again, guess what? Lack of time. It's a proper, like, 80s, retro keyboard, so I'm very curious about, the synth sounds and all that stuff, because I know that some of them can sound very, very unique. Yeah, we'll see.
Cool. Yeah, maybe you can even provide some samples to the the modding community.
Oh, okay, we'll see. We'll see.
Good stuff. How are you, Rob?
Been a busy month. I've just been flat out with a lot of stuff now. Top of the list, though, is when I was home, I rescued my first computer out of my parents' attic, and now I have it up and running. It's an old Atari 800 XL, and so I've already modded it for S-Video Out, and nice to see it going again.
Very nice.
The Checkmate 1500 case project, finalising the boards and cables for that. Bunch of repairs, and Carl Jekyll, if he's listening, that's his 4000 is completed and fixed and ready to go again. Been a busy few weeks.
Yeah, indeed. And Luke, that was just a bit of a sick joke, really, about you providing samples. I know you're as busy as the rest of us, so.
You're fine, don't worry about it.
I don't know how you get the time to work on the Checkmate boards.
Me too, really.
Yeah, sure. Sacrifice things like exercise and food and sleep.
Drinking coffee.
That's it.
I've been reading Denny Atkins' book, Best Amiga Tips and Secrets, and it's absolutely incredible. I'm really enjoying that. I'll talk a bit more about that in a while. Also, humble beginnings is a theme that I'd like to look at during this podcast and between now and the next time. So we've been asking online about people's beginnings and basically the oldest files that they can find that they created themselves on their Amigas. It could be, a mod that you made, or it could be your first drawing of, a stickman or woman in deluxe paint. Absolutely anything, a startup script, maybe a save game, or even just an essay. I remember I used to type up essays because I wasn't really that technically good on the Amiga. So if you can find any of that stuff that you still have available and you have the backstory too, it would be lovely if you could send them in to info@amigausers.ie. We've already got a couple of really nice ones, including an icon that Rob made back in the 80s or 90s. We also have an old deluxe paint, somebody's first mod attempt, some software as well. So it can be absolutely anything, really. The point is really that it's a humble beginning. So please get in touch with that. It would be really interesting to hear your stories. Let's move on to the news. K&A magazine, Commodore and Amiga Plus, issue 12 has been released, and this time the history of Psygnosis, interviews with Paolo Besser, Antonio Savona, and there's lots more happening there, so you can go to ka-plus.pl to check that out.
Quite big news that's been across all the Amiga forums, but Stephen Soley, who is the team lead for development for Hyperion and on the OS4 dev team, has been fired as he said it, from the team. So it's all very weird and it's all very strange anyway, but he's been putting a few posts on the forums about it, and there's a lot of discussion around it, but basically it looks like he was let go because, and air quote, he was untrustworthy. If you've ever seen him on his talks, because after the two brothers kind of disappeared out of the public eye because, they were getting a lot of hassle and basically do their thing in private and not worry about the Amiga community as it is, Stephen was basically the face and the front man of Hyperion and OS4, and he went to all the shows in the US and he did the Ami World things and did all the presentations and stuff like that, and he was very good. Open guy, he's friendly, took everything in a good way, and it's a strange move because they really don't have anyone to take over that role. It's unfortunate, and because he was behind all the regular updates that we were getting for OS4. I know they've stopped since because there was a change in policy, but yeah, he was behind coordinating all that and getting all these updates out, and really had a nice setup going on. So it's a shame to see. It's kind of probably not as surprising as it should be because of all the shenanigans that are going on at the moment, but oh well. But best of luck, Stephen, and I hope you don't abandon the community altogether. That we'll find some more of your work independent as it might be.
All the turmoil going on around Hyperion, that doesn't surprise me, to be honest. Well, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes, that's the thing. Right, another piece of interesting software, Amiga Test Kit. The program used to be called SysTest. Basically, what it does is just testing your hardware, your memory expansion, for example, your floppy drive, your keyboard. Pretty useful tool, I must say.
It is, yeah, it's fantastic. SysTest I've used so much because you can download it as an executable or also as a floppy disk image. But the program's so small that it's literally just a track loader. So it isn't a DOS disk. It's just literally reads one track and then it's loaded. And I've used it so much that I've worn out the first track on a disk.
Brilliant. That's, confirms
it's fantastic.
Useful tool.
It is. It really, really is. And
good.
You can test all the ports. You can it's just so useful. Between that and Diagram, they're two absolutely indispensable tools for troubleshooting. Now, next is, as Luke was saying at the start of the show, we've got the first picture of a fully built prototype of this 68060 accelerator. Now, this is the Warp 1260 by Luke's friends. Who's behind it now? Remind me.
There's a guy called Cesar, actually, from CS Lab. It's a Polish company. CS
Lab, that's it. Yeah.
CS Lab, and they've been focusing on accelerators, but really high-tech ones. They started with an accelerator board for Amiga 500, so they've had Warp 560, and it's a similar concept, like a 060 FPGA hybrid, and now they've got Warp 1260. They are really quick if it comes to constructing them and building them up as well. And there's one more thing. They've recently announced that they will be working on Warp 4060, so a Warp card 060 FPGA hybrid for Amigas 3000 and 4000 as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Absolutely unimaginable.
So it looks like a good strategy because they started off with the 500, which in relative terms is a much easier machine to develop for because you can sort of, for want of a better term, you can just brute force the processor on it. Can't do that as such on the 1200. It's a little bit more complicated. And, so once they had it going on the 500, you can move on to the 1200 and the 3000, 4000.
Yes, that's right.
It's a nice stepping stone. But yeah, it's great that they have this board going. Now, there's a lot of work to do in it because, at the moment it's barely running. But, it's at the stage now where it's basically firmware that needs to be done. It looks great as well if you see the photographs of it. But it's like you're saying, it's got an FPGA on there, which they're using to add a lot of cool features as well, like an RTG graphics and sound card.
Wi-Fi as well.
Yeah. And a fast storage. So it's come by flash card slot.
Yeah, that's right.
It's going to be a hell of a card.
Yeah, we'll see.
Hell of a price tag as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, the one thing that worries me actually is, availability of 060 CPUs. That's going to be, a pretty difficult thing to get your hands on. And I'm pretty sure the prices of 060s are going to skyrocket now.
Absolutely, once there's a sudden surge in demand. Because at the moment they're about €150 maybe for a chip. So that'll easily jump.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes then.
Okay, Hollywood 8 add-ons have just been released. Hollywood 8 itself was released back in February, but just a couple of days ago, they've released add-ons for Cubic IDE, an updated player, SDK updates, and documentation. And that announcement was made on AmigaWorld.net, and you can go there and get the scoop on that.
Right, if you like demo scene, just like, for example, me, you'll find it pretty interesting. Amiga Live, actually www.amigalive.org, has released a series of interviews with demo scene people. It's a mixture of, interviews from the past, from the near past, and from present times. And I'm pretty sure the database of people being interviewed will grow in time. So if you like the demo scene, if you like reading about it, feel free to do it. There are some pretty interesting stories.
Right, let's move on to the gaming section.
8-Bit Slicks is a port of our game from the PC world. I remember a game from the early 90s, or something like 93, 94, I think, on a PC computer. And it was called Slicks. There is also a game on C64, like the original game from 92, developed by Codemasters, and it was called Slicks. These are two different games. Both are very, very playable. The new one is pretty interesting as well. And apart from a C64 version, there are ports for other machines as well. Have a look on the website, 8bitslicks.com.
Cool. Now, I mentioned this at the start of the show, and I'm very excited about this, but there's been a game called Bridge Strike in development for a while on the Amiga. And this is by the same guys who did Tanks Fury. If you remember, that game is very, very nice, sort of single-screen multiplayer tank shooting game. It's very cool. This game now is a take on the River Raid kind of idea. So if you haven't played River Raid, it's vertical scrolling, and you're flying a plane through some valleys, basically following a river up the screen and shooting bad guys and the usual stuff and collecting fuel along the way. It's that kind of thing. I played that to bits on my Atari, actually. It's a great game of the era. So this modern take on it, it's essentially the same idea, but with some lovely sort of cutesy forced perspective graphics. It's the same style as Tanks Fury, so if you've seen that, you know what to expect. But it looks brilliant, and that is due out very soon, possibly next month, I think. And that is going to be available for €11, which is fantastic. So that'll be a download. There's also going to be a physical copy available. That's one definitely to look for.
Shogo Mobile Armor Division. It's a first-person shooter game for Amiga OS 3 with Warp OS and Amiga OS 4.1. It's the final edition. The port was created by Frank Menzel, who also created the ports of Gorky 17 and Descent Free Space. The game can be purchased as a digital download from Hyperion Entertainment now.
Yeah, I should just point out that's the same game that was released about 20 years ago, but it's now available as a digital download, so it wasn't actually available except on CD until now. Yeah, so if you have it already, don't worry about it. But at the time, it was one of the few games that was PowerPC only. It needed a colossal machine in Amiga terms to run it, and I never played it at the time, so I'll have to give that a look now on my machine.
Okay, thanks for the correction, Rob. That's why you're here.
That's not even a correction. It's just don't want to disappoint people who kind of go, oh, maybe it's a sequel. The OS 4.1 version is like it's a new compile. The previous version, I think, worked on 4.1, but now it's a 4.1 native as well as the downloadable version.
Right, another game for C64, this time called The Wild Wood. Not a lot of things, or not a lot of information has been released about this game, apart from the fact that the graphics actually looks absolutely magnificent and astonishing. I don't know who does the graphics, but it looks absolutely brilliant. Therefore, I thought I'm just gonna, mention this. If you go to www.indieretronews.com, you'll find the screenshots are there, the previews are there, and for C64, it looks absolutely brilliant.
Fans of Beneath the Steel Sky might be interested to hear that there's been a sequel announced. So this is 25 years after the original. Unfortunately, it's not for the Amiga platforms, but interesting nonetheless, because it's the same guys behind it, and they've tried to keep the same atmosphere and the same world, but they've made it into a sort of a more modern style 3D adventure game. So if you remember Beneath the Steel Sky on the Amiga, it was fantastic. It's a very atmospheric point and click adventure, a really nice world, dystopian future kind of world. It was really cool, really nice story, characters are great. So it's one to keep an eye on if you're a fan of that.
Have you been playing any games in the last month, guys? Yourselves?
Well, I did have a couple of people over there a while ago, and ended up playing some Alien Breed Tower Assault, because I'd never really played it and decided, got someone around, let's give this a go. Didn't go particularly well, but it was fun all the same. To
be honest, the only game that I've recently played was Wipeout 2049 on my PlayStation.
Massive fan of Wipeout.
Me too.
It's fantastic.
Can't compare anything to Wipeout, it's just got that style.
Absolutely. There is Wipeout 2097 for the Amiga.
Yeah, there is.
Have it here.
Works very well on Morph OS, I think. Works pretty alright on PowerPC Amigas and OS4 as well.
I got a recommendation a good while back from Seamus on the Facebook group. A game called Exit. It was published by Psygnosis, and it's a puzzle game. And it's very good. It's tough. Like, it's harder than, say, like another puzzle game I really enjoy, and I'm kind of switching back and forth between them, is Pushover.
Pushover's great.
By Ocean. And it's great. This one is a bit steeper. It's a bit it is harsher, but it's really fun. I'm really enjoying it. So, thanks, Seamus, for the recommendation. I'm about 40 or 50 levels in. And the funny thing is, I had to go and look at videos online for about the first 10 levels to figure out the way the game works and how it thinks and stuff, because I just couldn't get it. But then after that, I got the next kind of 40 on my own, and now I'm a bit stumped again. So I just switched back over to Pushover for a break, and then I go back to Exit. And
yeah, but it reminds you of when you release that game Worthy as well. It's a similar concept, I think. Yeah. I know this one. I know Exit.
Exit, yeah. Well, Exit is different to Worthy because there are no actual other characters or opponents.
Yeah, right.
But it is similar as well. It's a top-down puzzle.
Both very good ones.
Okay, let's move on to discoveries. Well, one of my discoveries this month is that iGame has been open sourced for some time, and it's hosted on GitHub at the moment, so you can download the source code there, and there's build instructions. And also hi to Emmanuel there, who's based in Greece, who is the creator of iGame. It's nice to chat to you, Emmanuel.
Now, apologies for this, because it's yet another Atari mention. I seem to be mentioning Atari a lot in this episode.
Don't worry about it, Rob. It's nostalgia.
It's 8-bit Atari as well, which has the Amiga DNA in it, you know. As part of my repairs for this Atari 800 that I have, I came across a website in America that seems to have a lot of new old stock parts. And it's the most bizarre website. It looks like someone wrote it in Notepad in about 1993 and hasn't touched it since. So it's got all your flashing GIFs. It's got I know this page. Big fonts all over the place. It's got horrible different coloured words, and it's all it needs is basically a marquee somewhere, and it's it's a perfect shot of GeoCities nostalgia there. It's but apparently it's still, the guy's still running it and it's still working. You can still email your orders in because there's no forums or anything like that, but it does have a page counter and a hit counter on it. So it's up at 1 million hits now at this stage. Definitely a blast from the past, that, and I'm pretty sure it'll work on every Amiga browser out there.
I've been visiting it. And they've got like really interesting stock if it comes to Atari. Not only the small Atari, XL, XE, but also ST, STE, and new old stock if it comes to Falcons as well.
But apparently the guy bought up the Atari warehouse over there near him when they went out of business.
Oh, okay.
And when they left the computer stuff, and so he just has pallets and pallets of custom chips, all the Atari custom chips. Cool. It's unbelievable.
Cool, really good.
But bestelectronicsca.com. Worth a look for nostalgia, if nothing else.
Right, apparently there's a new German podcast Kompott, and it covers Amiga, C64 and other retro stuff. So if you're German speaking or you speak German, why not have a look? It's http://blog.retrokompott.de.
Yeah, they have a cool thing on their website where, as you listen through the MP3, it actually jumps down on the links to each section. So it's like a menu. You've got this menu of each of the items on the podcast.
Interactive podcast.
Exactly. So you can just say, maybe you just want to hear a certain piece about a certain game. You can click on it, and the MP3 will jump to that section.
Interesting idea. Very good one.
The discovery for me this month also is I've been going through iGame, through the unplayed ones, just to see what else is in there. And something I came across in the S section is called Sextimates. And it's an Amiga game that quizzes you and teaches you about facts about sex education, basically. And the surprising thing about this, first of all, I learned more about sex education on about 15 minutes of playing that game than I did in school back in the 90s. I didn't
have a sex education in school back in the 90s, to be honest.
No, we learned almost nothing. It was surprisingly relevant even today. It talks about the rates of transmissions for certain things like STIs, how likely you are not to get it in certain conditions. Workplace harassment is covered in there, statistics, and American legislation relating to abuse, factors leading to prostitution, all these kinds of, very real and very current things too, with things like the Me Too movement. I don't know how well the stats hold up today, but there's some of them I am familiar with from current kind of events and stuff like that, and listening to kind of feminist podcasts and stuff. And some of those stats are correct, like the likelihood of where certain more likely to happen within the family or within your own community, for example, rather than somebody you don't know. And it's very interesting. And to be honest, I think I'll probably end up doing this, using this with my own here to teach it.
Definitely not one I've heard of, but yeah, interesting.
Thank you. Can I squeeze in one more discovery? There's a book called Best Amiga Tips and Secrets by Denny Atkins, and I really recommend it, really, no matter what you're, unless you're an absolute Amiga expert, you'll probably get something out of this, and it's really good even for beginners. There's all kinds of helpful information, like the one I'm looking at here is, right, there's how to spruce up your workbench desktop, how to solve common problems. Like, sometimes you double click on an application, it says there's no application to design, specify to tell us how to handle this. It tells you how to fix those problems. How to modify icons, which is fairly easy, but also how to modify icons like the RAM disk and keep it persistent after each boot with some clever tricks using the startup sequence. And it explains like things like set patch, the way set patch used to be at the beginning of the startup sequence and stuff like that, and why that is. It's absolutely brilliant. Another thing is well that I've just come across is how to, there are, the secret messages in Workbench, where you can hold down both shift keys, both alt keys, and then the F keys. You probably need a friend to help you with that. But, there's all these great stuff in it that just open up the Amiga. So if you're one of the people I was talking to at Amiga Ireland who kind of says, I never really got into that side of the Amiga, I kind of wish I did. This is the absolute easiest way in. Honestly, just read a page or two of it and you'll have something to tinker around with. These are just lovely little tips that you can get in and start working on your Amiga, and it's really fun.
Nice. Very nice.
End of sermon. Okay, let's move on to the events. Amiga OS 4 Northeast Get Together is happening on June 14th to 16th in the Quality Inn and Suites Riverfront, Oswego, New York. All kinds of Amiga users are welcome, whether that's OS 4, AROS, Morphos or Classic. Jamie Kruger is going to show off AVD there. There'll be a surprise group trip, a hands-on questions and answers session, an all-you-can-eat barbecue, and swimming, socialising and fun with your fellow Amigans. You can contact Aaron at amigaonthelake.com and include your phone number, and he'll get in touch with you.
The Scottish Amiga users are having another meetup. They're fairly irregularly scheduled, but every 3 to 4 months we'll have one. And so this one's happening on Sunday, the 28th of April from 12 until 6. That'll take place for anyone who happens to be nearby. It's in Glasgow. It's in the hall of Pollockshaw's Church, which is right beside Crossmalouf train station. Now, we don't have a swimming pool or anything like that, but we are going to the pub afterwards, so we're going to take a Scottish approach to this one.
Yeah, fair play. I was going to talk about part 2 of the survey results last month. Sorry, we talked about just the overall stats of the feedback, whether people like things, didn't like things, what they wanted to change, what they wanted to see more of and less of. But there's actually been some comments sent back as well, and I wanted to kind of go through those. But actually, I haven't really had time to properly sort them in a way that I can kind of go through them here properly. So we'll defer those for now. And that is the end of the event section. So good luck to everybody in Scotland. And also, hat tip to Sean Fitzgerald, by the way. I almost forgot to mention, who told me about the OS4 event happening over the States. Let's go on to Ask Amiga.
Okay, in the last little while, there have been a couple of 600s that I've got, Amiga 600s that I've had to repair. And I've heard of other people having similar faults as well. So basically, these are Amigas that are totally dead, not starting up, black screen, no power activity as such, and looking basically completely dead. In a couple of cases for me, and it seems like a few cases cropping up here and there on forums, there's it seems that there's a power short happening on that's related to one or two of the vias that are on the board. So on this is going to be sort of really more of interest to people who are actually looking at repairing things themselves. But on the board, you've got near one of the capacitors that almost always leaks. You've got a couple of vias. There are little channels going through the board that carry power. So one of them carries power to the Paula chip, and one of them carries power to the serial circuitry. So there's a minus 12 volts and a plus 5 volt via, and they're very close to ground connections, and they're very close to this capacitor that leaks. And what happens is the via gets corroded. The corrosion conducts electricity, and because it's so close to these ground connections, they end up shorting out. And so all of a sudden you start getting power, essentially leaking through either to ground or to the minus 12 volt rail. And that will shut down your power supply or cause glitches or just stop the Amiga from starting up altogether. So it's a weird one, but it seems to be relatively common and purely down to how tight that particular part of the board is on the 600, because it is actually a small board, and unlike the 1200, which has a bigger space to work with, it's the Amiga really only uses 2 layers, so the power has to be routed in amongst the signals on the top and bottom of the board, and it's just at these points it's a bit too close. So once you start getting problems with that capacitor, it's very, very common for it to cause shorts like that, and it's something to look for, because it can damage traces. You can get traces burnt out, and it can end up leading to much bigger problems. But the key thing here is that both of these vias that I'm talking about are hidden underneath other parts. So there's a resistor and a diode that completely hide all that's happening away from you. So the first you know about it is when the Amiga doesn't start up. So it's worth checking that out. You can check it on amigapcb.org and have a look at this. It's very near the Paula chip. There's a 10 microfarad capacitor there and a 1 ohm resistor, and there's a small diode there as well. And that's what it comes down to a lot of the time. And so now when I get a dead 600, it's the first thing I'll look at. So interesting, because it's you wouldn't class it as a design fault, but it's almost a product of the design that just the tracks are just so close together there. It's only after the capacitors have leaked, and it just happens that this is one of the capacitors that almost always leaks. It's one of the first to go on the 600.
Good to know, especially for people who do actually the capacitors exchange.
Yeah.
But all that comes with experience, to be honest.
Well, that's it, because the first one of them took me hours to find.
Yeah, there you go.
because it was shorting the plus 5 volts to minus 12 volts, which is causing the power supply to shut down. But it doesn't show up as a short against ground because the ground wasn't involved. It was a straight 17 volt short.
Riddle.
So,
riddle. And you've solved
it.
it.
Exactly. But now I know.
Cool.
But, so now if I'm ever recapping a 600 and that capacitor's leaked, I'll also take off the diode and the resistor and clean up underneath them, because it's just, it'll happen eventually.
Between the Amiga test kit and diagram, I'm hoping to, get cracking.
It's about 18, 20 euros for a full set, and that'll cover the 500, 600, 1200, 4000, whatever.
First thing, if it comes to 1200, it would be the capacitors. I'm pretty sure about it, because they leak. It's the same story with 600. They just absolutely, I think that's the main thing that happens to 1200 and 600s now. They leaking capacitors. Yeah. They are the killers.
That's it, because they don't have a NiCad battery in them, so it's the capacitors that does it.
That's right.
Let's move on to online activity. This month, the top tweet was our tweet about the Bambi Amiga interview with Darren Glenn. Also, we've had an email from Graham in Australia, who listens to us during his 3-hour return commute. Graham, sorry we don't fill in our 3 hours. It's torture. Yeah, but thanks for the really lovely email. And you're on a commute now, I take it, listening to us, so best of luck. Our top Facebook post was an Amiga repair process by none other than Rob. And that's actually a really good post, Rob.
Cheers.
It nicely goes through, steps through the process, of how you're kind of eliminating and testing out different things. It's really, I think it's part of what inspired me actually to get cracking on this.
There you go. Yeah, a few people have asked sort of, just like what's involved and stuff like that. So I thought some people might find it interesting. That's good to hear.
And we've had some new members.
David Bradley, Stuart Keith,
Sebastian Rudnik, and Grzegorz Duda.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome along.
Yeah, we've nearly 400 members in the group now. It's
Congratulations. That's a massive achievement.
It is. Now, the important thing is to come to the event in January.
All of them? 400?
400.
No.
Yeah, we'll find somewhere to put you. That's all from us. Until next time, music was by Virtual Dimensions and banjo guy Ali. The song we're going to play out with this month came second place at the Amiga Ireland 2019 mod competition, and it's called Square Funk by Ace Man. See you next month. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello?
Hello?
Hmm.